So what exactly is diversification? We've used the term diversification. That's the milestone or the opportunity to sell back shares at age 55 or 60. That's one term for diversification. Another term for diversification, or another use of the word diversification, means investment diversification. If you're working in an employee-owned company and you have stock in that company, that's a concentrated single stock position. However, if you were to invest in, say, the Standard & Poor's 500 or the S&P 500, that is a mutual fund or an exchange-traded fund that would be available to you that would buy a little slice of the 500 largest companies operating in the US that are publicly traded. That would be a diversified mutual fund or diversified ETF. To provide another example of diversification, let's think about a vegetable garden. I'm a huge vegetable gardener and I like to plant vegetables every year so I don't have to spend as much money at the grocery store. When I plant my garden, some years I will plant squash and I'll have a bumper crop of butternut squash. I'll make squash soup, bake squash, use squash in other recipes, give squash away to my neighbors. If I wind up with 75 squash, I've got a huge crop of squash. However, in many years, I'll plant broccoli, beets, tomatoes, peppers, eggplant. Well, why would I do that in addition to planting squash? Even though I love squash, I know that sometimes I'll have a fungus or a bug that will wipe out my squash crop. However, by planting a variety of vegetables, I'll always have enough to eat. The same principle holds true for investing. Investing in a variety of companies will ensure that you always have enough money for retirement income, as opposed to relying on all your money in a single company or a single squash crop that might get wiped out. So keep in mind the concept of diversification when you're reinvesting the proceeds after you sell shares back to your company. I mentioned the option of taking the cash from the sale of your ESOP and reinvesting it into an individual retirement account. I've put together an example to show you what the sale of shares back to the company might look like in terms of continuing to grow your nest egg. The center column is the value of your ESOP at age 55. In our example, we just used $1 million. You'll notice the value of shares increases between age 55 and 60. That's because the participant is still working at the employee-owned company and still being granted shares each year that he or she works there. The next column is the rollover to IRA column. That is the amount of shares sold back to the company, received cash for those shares, and the value that's moved into the IRA. In our example, the first diversification event at age 55 resulted in $250,000 moved to the individual retirement account. The last column is the IRA account balance at different ages. You'll notice the balance increases across time. That's because the funds in the IRA are invested in a diversified portfolio of stocks and bonds, and here we're assuming a 6% annual return on the individual retirement account. So you'll notice across time, as this individual sells shares back to the company at age 55 and more shares sold back at age 60, he or she is reinvesting or rolling over that money to their IRA at each point when they are eligible to sell shares back. By the time they're age 68, they have 225,000 shares remaining to sell back to the company. And when they sell back those shares, they roll those shares to the IRA. And that causes their IRA account balance to increase each time that happens, as well as the investment return. This individual was fortunate that by the time they reached age 68, after 14 years of diversifying and selling shares back to the company and receiving distributions at retirement, they have a nest egg of $2.4 million in their individual retirement account. The estimated income at age 67 or 68 for this individual, if you include their individual retirement account plus a likely Social Security payout, is approximately $100,000 a year of income before they pay any federal or state taxes.